Welcome to Star Wars Timeline. In today's review, we're looking at the third book in the X-Wing series, The Krytos Trap. Let's find out if this book soars high, or if I'm beginning to lose interest in this series. Find out next. Where should I start reading? What is canon versus legends? When does the story begin? The answers to these questions is right here on Star Wars Timeline. The X-Wing is a popular 10-book series from the Star Wars Legends, and Krytos Trap is the third book in that series, written by the legendary Michael Stackpole in October of 1996. Now, as is my tradition, I always like to highlight the artists of these books, and the art for this series is primarily created by the popular Paul Youll. You guys could see his artwork in this series and outside of it, illustrating other Star Wars materials, and mostly he does these beautiful portrayals of space combat. I can't recommend him high enough, and I think he was partially responsible for introducing me and getting me really excited and interested about this series when I saw them on the bookshelves of my local bookstore here in New York City. I mean, it took one glance to say, I want to check this out. This looks really, really beautiful. Now, for those of you guys who don't know, the story in this book takes place 7 years after Battle of Yavin or after Episode 4. A quick reminder, this is a Legends book. This book takes place before Star Wars was purchased by Disney in 2014. Now, before I start talking about the plotline, the characters, and give you my impression of this book, please be warned, guys. This is a full spoiler on review. I'm going to talk about the plot lines and give you like full details what happens and what's my opinion of this, so you have been warned. Please turn away now if you haven't read it. This is a full spoiler review. Now, let's get into it, and what I'll do is take a look at my notes here and discuss what generally happens in the plotline, and as I go along, I will tell you how I felt about this book. I have already finished reviewing the first other two novels. I completely enjoyed them. I thought they were stellar books, and I'm going into this one, I honestly didn't expect any less from Michael Stackpole, but I kept my mind open still, because some of my favorite authors wrote Star Wars books that I really didn't enjoy. Like, for example, James Luceno's Darth Plagueis novel, which a lot of fans praise for a good reason. You know, it's considered a good book, but I personally didn't enjoy it. So let's stick with this one and see how Krytos Trap fares to the previous two novels that I already finished. Now, obviously, it's part of a bigger series, and the story here picks up and continues right from the book too. So right away, I want to say it benefits greatly to know the storyline that takes place before that. It's not really a novel intended for a novice Star Wars reader who wants to jump on his first book. This would not be the one to get into. And the story is continuing with the Alliance finally occupying Coruscant. In the previous book, they have been struggling to take possession of the homeworld of the planet where the center of the galactic diplomacy and politics, and they finally managed to do it. And the main antagonist of this series, the Imperial Admiral Isan Izard, she leaves behind this deadly virus called the Krytos virus. And what it does is it affects the non-human species of the homeworld, and it attacks them in the most horrid manner and leaves people dead after a week of being contaminated, and it just wreaks havoc on the non-human population. And it's exactly what she wanted to accomplish in the previous book, to destabilize the Alliance. And she sort of accomplishes to an extent, because now there's a shortage of Bacta, this healing plant that the Republic heavily relies on, or really honestly everybody in this galaxy, as this miracle cure. And there's a shortage of it, and it's in high demand because it's the one that combats this virus pretty well. And of course, because of the tensions rise and the non-human population demands the Republic, who liberated them, to say like, look, now you have to take care of us, and not just the human half of it, you have to provide the Bacta for all of us. And another thing that Isan Izard does, part of her master plan to defeat the Alliance, is she leaves her agent Kirtan Lore, who we previously saw in the first two novels, and he's one of the henchmen. He's a strategic mind, he's very intelligent, and he basically does all of Isan Izard's biddings, and she leaves him with the responsibility to destabilize and disrupt the Republic by any means possible. That's how she wants to attack the Republic from within. and try to destroy them, and only then come back with her flotilla and maybe try to like take over the planet. Now we come back to obviously the Rogue Squadron, which is the lead cast of the series, is really a whole team of the Rogue Squadron pilots, and they are tasked with protecting the Bacta shipments, which the Alliance is able to secure from the home planet of Typhera, where this product is produced. And another task that they need to accomplish is to secure storage facilities on Coruscant, trying to protect it from the terrorist attacks, obviously orchestrated by Kirtan Lure, by this group called the Palpatine Counterinsurgency Front. And what I really found enjoyable about the book so far, this is my first big impression, is that many fans know or have heard about this X-Wing series primarily because of its space battles. And it's very true in this book, but also it's nice to see how our pilots are able to handle things on the ground. So it was really fun to watch ground battles unfold and the good guys trying to win the day, as well as really epic and fun to read space battles with full of strategy and like a military jargon and different spaceship maneuvers. So the novel succeeds on two fronts there. So in terms of action, which there's more than plenty enough in the Krytos Trap, the third book, there's something I couldn't complain about. It completely fulfills that quota there. Now, in the previous novel, we end up with a very climatic ending. By the end of it, one of the Rogue Squadron's most prominent pilots, Corran Horn, and one of the big stars of this series, he's presumed dead. There's a decisive battle at the end of the last book. If you guys are curious about it, you could check out my review from the previous book. And he's presumed dead, but in the epilogue, we find out that he really survives, and he's taken hostage by the Empire. Now, in this book, we find out that he's located in a Lusankya prison, which is a secret, ultra-secure Imperial prison that everybody is afraid of just of its name. And he's there being tortured and brainwashed by Isan Izard. And she says, I'm going to break you. I'm going to make you my unwilling agent, and you're going to do my bidding. And fortunately for Corran Horn, those tactics don't work. The mind control doesn't work for him because Corran Horn is part of a Corsac, Coruscant Corellian security force. He is trained to not to submit to that kind of torture tactic. So he's left there with the population in prison, and Isan Izard basically wants to leave him there to rot, till he dies. But he plans an escape. He's a very resourceful young man, and he gets help from a very unlikely place. He discovers other POWs, prisoners of war from the Alliance, and one of them, which is revealed at the very end of the novel, and I found it was pretty interesting and cool reveal, it's no one else than Jan Dodona. And Jan Dodona is that gray-beard gentleman tactician that you see in scenes with Leia in the original trilogy. He's there standing by the display board when they see the attack of the first Death Star. He's very recognizable actor, even though he appears for very few moments in movies. He's one of the leaders of these prisoners, and he tries to bunch them together and give them hope and say, like, look, one day we will be rescued by the Republic. So that was a really cool cameo there. The next part, a big section of this novel, is the trial of Taicho Kelchu. Now, he's also a veteran fighter pilot who was responsible for destroying or helping destroy the second Death Star, and we see his little A-wing fly in one of the scenes in the movies. That's actually Taicho Kelchu flying there. And all along, because he was imprisoned by Isan Izard before as well, he was presumed by some parties in the Republic to be an Imperial mole, a traitor who is there, infiltrated their ranks, and he's feeding the information back to the Empire. And he's being represented in this court case by another Rogue Squadron pilot, the Twi'lek Nawara Ven. And I felt it was very exciting and interesting to watch, very tense kind of like court scenes unfolding, almost like that movie with Tom Cruise and Jack Nicholson, oh man, I'm forgetting the name of it. The Few Good Men. I forgot. You guys remember this name? Anyway, it's like a very classic Hollywood scene of like tense court cases where the defense is trying to prove their point and so forth. I felt it was very interesting and exciting, and the moment to really take a breather from all the epic action and actually follow the novel on that front, because the political intrigue and warfare, like the tactics of it, is also very well illustrated in the novel. And Taicho Kelchi is being also accused of being an Imperial spy, as I mentioned before, but also for murdering Corran Horn. So in that respect, the novel works really, really well by keeping the tensions high, because on this one point, we as readers know that Taicho Kelchi is innocent, because Corran Horn survives, and Corran Horn finds out as he's fleeing, as he's escaping this prison, he's finding out that Taicho Kelchi was not really innocent. And this previous confrontation that they had in the previous novel was really unjust, and Corran Horn wants to right the wrong and get to the Alliance on time to say, like, look, this guy's innocent and you're prosecuting him for no reason. We got to look for the real traitor in this in our ranks. And it's also left to the very last moments in this novel to figure out who the traitor is. But when the motivations of that person are given, I felt it was believable, because we are kind of like hinted what that person's background is. It doesn't really make you question throughout the novel why that person necessarily would be the traitor, but then when we learn the facts, we say, well, okay, I could see how this possibly rationally could happen and what the stakes for that person were. And as I said, this Imperial mole ends up no one else than Erisi Dlaret, also one of the X-Wing fighters. And the reason that she is the mole is because, A, she had a love interest in Corran Horn, and her advances were kind of brushed off because Corran Horn is pursuing someone else. He's pursuing another character in the series, Mirex Tarek. And because her advances were kind of like not reciprocated, but also because she is a family member of the Zufra Corporation on this planet Typhera, where the Bacta is the only place where it naturally grows and is produced. And her family is one of the two biggest corporations who have monopoly over the production of Bacta. So it sort of makes sense to them from the military perspective that the flow of Bacta needs to flow. There needs to be created a shortage of it because, wartime. And this is how they get most of their income. So it's also plausible why she would work towards sabotaging the Alliance's efforts to secure more Bacta. So at the end of it, obviously, we know that she's the traitor, and she escapes in a very interesting way because there is an attack on the Imperial ship, which I'll get later into, and she fakes that she kind of fakes that she's being pulled by the tractor beam, but what really happens is that she makes her escape. So I really liked the resolution of this novel, like the last third of the book, where we see her, Erisi Dlaret, as revealed as Imperial mode, but we also find out that one of the Alliance intelligence officers, one of the generals, Arian Kraken, he knew all along that there is a mole, and in order to draw that person out, they needed to stage the fact that Taicho Kelchu is being accused of being an Imperial mole. Again, it's a really interesting political and kind of like espionage themes going in the novel, which were complex, but they were flawlessly described and written by Stackpole in a way that's not confusing. It's always easy to follow from scene to scene when the novel jumps, and from character to character, and follow the action and follow the story to understand what's really going on. So what was my... Oh, yes, and by the end of the book, what happens is we find out that the prison that Corran Horn was trying to escape, the Lusankia, the legendary prison that everybody's afraid of, it's not actually a ship at all. It's not actually a prison at all. It's not somewhere far in the galaxy hidden from sight. It is actually a superstar star destroyer, the one that we saw Darth Vader in episode 6, and is actually buried deep beneath the surface of the upper layers of a Coruscant, and it was there all along. And Nisan Izard actually stayed on Coruscant all along, and she coordinated her indirect attacks and sabotages on the planet by actually being there. And by the end of the book, the ship kind of like breaks to the surface and makes its grand escape. But there's also a really cool scene with Corin Horn, which I will get into later on, because now I want to go into my full-on impressions of this book and what I thought of it. So as I mentioned, the political intrigue, the espionage, coupled with this really tense trial scene, work really, really well in this book. You have major players like Isan Izard, who is obviously the grand villain. You have minor characters like Kirtan Lor, who by this book, he gets the axe. He gets killed off in a very dramatic scene. It made sense. And I was happy that they're not holding on to major or minor characters just because. When it's time for somebody to go and you have a really interesting and effective scene to do so, that's exactly what Michael Stackpole does. He's never married to his characters. So it feels a little bit like Game of Thrones, but not quite. He never kills off somebody for the shock value. Like, see, I killed off, a popular character. And to my knowledge, Kirtan Lord was quite a popular character with the reading audience. There's another really, really cool Imperial, which we saw was enlisted from the Kessel mines in the previous book. And he's a former Imperial, Fleary Voru. And he is also a tactician. He's an Imperial, and he was known to be the only person who was like almost on par with Emperor Palpatine, that he knew the inner workings of the Empire so well, and he knew how to strategize and how put himself in the upper echelons of the Empire, put himself like on the highest ranks, that he almost vied for powers with the Emperor himself. And I found him a very intriguing person, because what the intelligence of the Alliance tries to do is employ him and say, look, the inner workings of Coruscant, and we can't have the new Alliance bickering with the former citizens of the Empire. You need to establish the balance. You need to understand its black markets, if we can procure more Bacta actually on the planet. And you need to kind of like make pace and diplomacy with the former Imperials, so the transition of Coruscant into free and liberated world follows smoothly. But obviously, he is up to something. He has his ulterior motives, and he tries to, once again, put himself in the positions of power. And once again, by the end of the book, he ends up with Isan Izard. I felt he was a very intriguing character that plays that both sides of the camp, and he's really looking after himself first and foremost. Very, very cool, very intriguing character. Another thing that really works for the book in terms of structure is its characters, because all of the X-Wing series up to now have been very character-driven. I mean, if you extract characters from any book, it becomes less fun, but it especially relies on them in this series. And I would say that predominantly all the characters are interesting to follow. Some of them get more play in the previous books, while this particular one, Krytos Trap, focuses on other ones. For example, there is, when the trial happens, one of the people that helps the trial, who helps Tai Chokelchu, is Navarro Wen. And we find out more about this trial, like his skills as a diplomat and as a very good a lawyer. So it was fun to get his other side, his civilian kind of like background. Another two characters that I found out were like highlighted and brought into light to readers, and a very interesting like camaraderie and friendship was between Wedge Antilles, which obviously we all know, and Tai Chokelchu. There are these two guys who fought and bled for the Republic to install the new alliance, and how they are now have to work to get Tai Chokelchu out of this dire situation, and how they're kind of like reminiscing what they fought for before, and how all this politicking happening now, and both of them being very frustrated. So it was a very cool and heartfelt bond between the two. Now there's another very cool couple of characters there, which we're looking at the non-human interspecies relationship there. We have Gavin Darklighter, a young boy from Tatooine who becomes a pilot in the Rogue Squadron. He's now having a relationship with Acer Salar, who is a Bothan female. And what I like about this relationship, it's a little bit distinct from what's happening in the modern Star Wars era. And I want to completely reiterate that I love the new canon books. I think they're very well written novels, and all the relationship and representation that I'm fully behind. But I just feel that Disney and Marvel are a little bit tone deaf of how they talk about representation and how they discuss, look, we have these kind of like non-traditional, non-standard gendered characters there. Like, for example, when the two Jedi twins were revealed to be non-gender, gender fluid, non-binary in the High Republic books, which are pretty decent books, it had no bearing on their sexual identity in the actual novels. So I felt that announcement was pretty tone deaf. And I feel like the big corporations like Disney sometimes try to cater a little bit to the woke culture and say like, look, see, and virtue signal that we're trying to be representative and we're trying to have all these characters, even though that's not the approach in novels, because all the new canon authors are very deliberate and they know what they're doing and they know how to deliver these characters in a very powerful and meaningful way. The way that it's talked about from the company itself is not too successful. Anyway, I'm saying all of this because in this book, which is from 1996, you have a discussion about the interspecies relationship, and it's done in a very grounded way. It is never highlighted like, oh my God, it's something out of this world. How could this be? We're trying to virtue signal here or like participate in this conversation of, that people from different races or species can be into one another. It's done in a very sober and quiet and like believable way. They're like, oh, okay, all right, I don't question it. The characters in the story sort of kind of question it. But you as a reader were never presented to this fact in a way that is like, see, the book is showing you something special here and you should follow it and you should agree with this idea. So that's what I appreciate about it. And one of the best things in this book was the last revelation. Corran Horn is wearing this little medallion on his chest, which is believed to be one of the coins, relics of the ancient Jedi. And he believes that his father and his grandfather kind of like carried it as a lucky charm because he believed that his grandfather knew a Jedi once upon a time. And what happens is, as he escapes the Lasankia prison, the Super Star Destroyer ship, he goes through the secret hidden vault that the Emperor kept on Coruscant, which is full of the Jedi relics. And in there, in his desperate attempt to flee and fight off some of the stormtroopers, he finds out a lightsaber that he's drawn to. And he actually grabs a hold of and he fights them off. And later on, he finds out from no other than Luke Skywalker that that particular lightsaber belonged to his real grandfather, who is, I have name written down right here. One second, guys. Nija Halcyon. So that's the real name and that's the real legacy of Corran Horn's past. And his grandfather was actually a Jedi who died, in the Clone Wars, and his best friend came back and married his grandmother and looked after his dad, and he was able to hide their family and their past by like scrambling their information, their data in the Imperial records to hide the child and the grandchild and say that, the Empire will not prosecute them. And it opens the question. Obviously, I know about Corran Horn in the later books when, he becomes the prominent Jedi. But in the context of this particular book, it opens these possible avenues. And for somebody who's reading for the first time, questions like, hey, what's going to happen? Is Corran Horn actually going to follow his past? Because he's already given a chance to do so by Luke Skywalker, who says, look, your past is directly connected with the Jedi. He kind of alludes to the fact that you may have, if you follow this tradition, you will be strong in the Force as well. And I really enjoyed that idea because this book once again reinforces the fact that the Force is not exclusive to the Jedi. It's not exclusive to the Skywalker family. Anybody who dedicates themselves to this idea and to the traditions of the Jedi could become strong in the Force. And that's why I think in the later novels, Corran Horn works really, really well because he is like Luke Skywalker. He opens up an opportunity for all of us, the readers, to believe that, we could have that power too. And overall, I want to close up my impression on this book is that that final revelation about Corran Horn, it gave me such warm feelings and memories of reading other Star Wars books because it parallels what goes on in other Legends novels. And it ties in perfectly into Luke Skywalker's search for the Jedi. Like, for example, the book The Children of the Jedi, where he tries to find out the legacy and any scoop, any information. But here, you know, thanks to Corran Horn, they actually discover a whole vault of Jedi relics, which is a really interesting connection. And another one is the Jedi Academy trilogy, my all-time favorite Star Wars books. There's also a really beautiful tie-in from that scene of Corran Horn discovering the Jedi relics with that book, where, hey, there's the Jedi had their past and they were put into this very negative light by the Empire as these villains, and now slowly the Republic, the New Alliance, is discovering who they really were. So far, I'm 3 books into the X-Wing series. I've been meaning to read them for decades ago. I just finally got around them. And after 3 books, what's really cool is that each one feels like a chapter of a larger story, or they feel like an episode of a TV show. Each one is pretty compact. It focuses on a very specific conflict, but they're all so interconnected, and it gives the chance for all the familiar and returning characters to grow together and become even more impactful and more interesting to the reader, and I really like that. I have not really much to say about Michael Stackpole's prose or his style of writing. I mean, the man knows what he's doing. He is known in the Star Wars community as one of the finest Star Wars authors. So if I were to rate this book, guys, this is another straight 4 out of 4. The X-Wing series is legendary and is so popular, and it's known to this day for a good reason. I mean, go to Barnes & Nobles, go to any bookshop, go to Star Wars sections, and even though it will have the little, you know, yellow Legends band over it, you will still find all the X-Wing series books being printed to this day for a good reason, because they're this good, they're this consistent in the storytelling, and they're just telling you these larger than life characters and stories, which I believe only will grow as the time progresses, you know, and I read the consecutive books and give you guys my thoughts and reviews. Anyway, this was a wonderful read. Thank you so much for watching, guys. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to my channel, hit that like button. My name is Benjamin. I do Star Wars comic book and book reviews, character highlights, lore videos. I have my podcast, and I would really appreciate your time and your comments as well. If you're a big fan of this series, please leave a comment. Tell me what you thought of this particular book, what's in store for me in the next one, and I'll see you next time.